What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Thrive by Nutrition podcast. So excited to have one of my good friends, Tommy Clark, on the podcast this week. First time being on this podcast. Only my second guest so far, so 1 out of 2 should feel pretty special here. But I followed Tommy for probably a little over a year on social media now. And I remember probably one of the first conversations we had was, I think it was something about me taking creatine and bleeding out of my butthole or something like that. I don't know. It was something like that.
No way.
You posted one of the question boxes or something, and I don't know.
Oh yeah. I remember that. That was funny. I remember my mom posted like a DM me in response to that story, and I was like, "Who asked that?"
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
Like, I do remember that now. That's funny.
Yeah. It was just an ongoing joke that I had about the whole creatine thing, but
it's a steroid though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a steroid.
You don't even have to work out.
It's gonna harm your kidneys. Like if you take it, you're gonna blow it up. Your stomach's gonna hate you, and like the second you go off of it, your gains are just gonna disappear.
Yeah, but if you do take it, maybe you'll have a heart attack by 30, but at least you'll be huge, and that's what matters. So
I'm glad that's the first thing your audience heard me say.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one, guys. So Tommy's a nutrition coach, and he's a nutrition coach for elite athletes, which I'm super pumped to have him on here to kind of bring a different perspective, because most of my episodes and most of the population that I usually talk to is either general population or people who are, I guess you could say, like recreational fitness people, not really like team sport athletes. So I think it's going to bring a really good perspective out of the podcast that's new, that hasn't really been talked about. So like I said, he's a nutrition coach, but I want him to talk a little bit about himself and just kind of give us a rundown on how he got into nutrition, being a nutrition coach, his school so far, and things like that.
Yeah, man. So first of all, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. It's always fun getting on other people's podcasts. It's always a fun time talking about this stuff. I mean, as far as my own journey inside of nutrition, my journey's kind of started with myself, like just using nutrition for myself to become a better athlete. Because growing up, I was kind of like your stereotypical unathletic white kid that stood in the corner and shot threes. I played basketball growing up, and like that was my game, and it continued to be my game from high school all the way into college. Yeah. And in high school, it was kind of one of those things where like I outworked a lot of people on the team and was just in a position where my hard work in the gym put me in a position to perform well and get the opportunity to play in college. But once I got to college, it was kind of like oh crap, everyone's a lot more athletic than I am. Yeah. Everyone runs faster, jumps higher, is stronger, is quicker, more agile.
For sure.
And here I was already in the gym 6-7 days a week. So I'm wondering, like, what else can I do? I'm in the gym doing skills training 1-2 times a day, watching film, watching instructional YouTube videos, buying every program you could imagine as far as basketball training and weight training and that stuff. And I was just kind of at a loss. I didn't really know what the right route was for me there, because I felt like I was doing everything but not getting the work that I was putting in wasn't translating directly into results. And I was kind of confused. So long story short, I was looking on this forum, this like basketball forum. I think it was like Elite Guard Training or something like that. I think they're still around. But I was reading through the forum, and there was a post about nutrition, and it kind of piqued my interest because I had never really looked down that rabbit hole before, other than like the typical like eat healthy. Like relative to my teammates, I ate pretty healthy. Like I wasn't one of those like pregame Taco Bell type people. Yeah. Some of my teammates were, but I still didn't really know all that much about it. So I read the post, and in the post, they referenced this book, and you're going to laugh at the title, The Paleo Diet for Athletes, which in hindsight doesn't make any sense, but health and nutrition books rarely do. So the post made it sound like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. You have to go on this diet. So me being an athlete that always was looking for ways to improve, ordered the book on Amazon, got there, read it cover to cover. Probably the first book I had read cover to cover on my own outside of school since like second grade, when I read like all the Harry Potter books in one summer, which is still like my proudest achievement. But read that book, as all health and nutrition books typically do, made it sound like the paleo diet was like this godsend
For
and
sure.
was the solution to all my issues. So I dove headfirst in, and I assume most of your audience will know kind of the general idea of the paleo diet, but for anyone that doesn't,
Yeah.
it's typically just eating like the cavemen did, which means cutting out any processed foods, cutting out any grains, and that's kind of what got me as an athlete. Um, like having to cut out grains inherently led to me eating less carbs, and as a result, my kind of experiment with the paleo diet led to me losing 21 pounds in just under a month and a half. And to this day, I don't know why no one told me anything. Looking back at pictures, I would look like a twig.
Oh my God.
And I'm pretty sure my mom might have said like I've lost weight or something, but like no one really brought it up. But um, that happened, and my performance went to crap. My vertical jump was less than it was before, which is definitely saying something because I couldn't jump at all. Feeling lightheaded during practices, like wondering and not even wondering what's going on. Because the weirdest thing is throughout that whole experience, I
Yeah.
thought it was like the best thing ever. Like I didn't even realize like what was actually happening
Hmm.
until I look back on it. Um, but long story short, just to condense it a little bit, that happened. My performance kind of went to crap a little bit, lost a bunch
Yeah.
of weight. But through that process, though, I was still super interested in nutrition. And it fascinated me. And like I said, started reading books again, started listening to podcasts, audiobooks on the way to class, all this stuff like that. And eventually, luckily, I started to come across the correct information rather than the stuff that you find in a lot of books that are trying to sell something or fad diets or things like that. I think I came across Jason Phillips' video he did with Mind Pump, Why the Paleo Diet Sucks for CrossFit. And I was like, wait a second, like I'm doing the paleo diet right now.
Yeah.
CrossFit, kind of similar in intensity to basketball. Obviously not the same sport, but both high intensity. So I was like, what's going on here? So I watched the video, kind of started, that was like the first time I heard like, oh, you need carbs to perform. Your central nervous system's going to get screwed up if you're like constantly just in a deficit. And that kind of got me going in the direction of like tracking my macros and starting to learn how to do things the correct way.
Yeah.
And feel free to cut me off at any time. I know I'm rambling,
No, no, keep going. It's good.
but
It's good.
but kind of got into tracking macros, figuring out how to do things the right way, kind of individualizing my nutrition over the course of the beginning of the off season, gained that weight I lost back. And over the course of the rest of the off season, ended up gaining another 8 or 9 pounds of pretty quality weight. And I posted the transformation a couple times on Instagram,
Yeah.
and it's pretty significant. Um, and then during that time, I was still fascinated with nutrition and really enjoying it. I started helping out my friends and teammates and family members, like just giving them general advice. My first quote unquote client, his name's Danny, dude lost like 60 pounds. And that was kind of like oh crap, I'm actually pretty good at this. I could probably do something with this. And what got me into actually getting certified as a coach, first through PN, then through NCI. And then it got to a point where I started to enjoy like the coaching and like the business and writing content and
Yeah.
reading and researching more than I actually enjoyed working out, playing basketball, and getting better as an actual athlete. And kind of as my second college season was about to begin, it just got to a point where between school, business, and hooping, it was just too much, and something had to give. Obviously, school wasn't going anywhere, so it was either business or basketball. And at that point, because looking back, I don't know what led me to believe that going the nutrition coaching route was the right decision at the time. Because looking back, it didn't really make any sense. But I went that route anyway, just because I enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and it was something that I was a lot more interested in at the time. So decided to stop playing basketball, walked away from that, and then over the past, I think it's like a year and a half now, been building the nutrition coaching business. First, kind of working with your typical general population, trying to lose a couple pounds, gain some muscle, stuff like that. And then now kind of transitioned into working with more athletes.
Hmm.
Um, and just recently landed my first NFL guy, which is pretty dope.
Yeah.
But I've been kind of building that over the past year and a half, which kind of brings us to where we are now.
Yeah.
That was a
So
lot. Damn.
no, it was good though. I'm glad the audience could hear how you kind of went through that journey. I
Yeah.
remember seeing you post transformations from that your first client, Danny. You said his name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean,
That dude was a machine, bro. Like
sure. I mean, with those kind of
the,
results, like,
the thing is though, like as a coach, it was a dream because it was like, here are your macros. He actually hit the macros,
yeah,
like spot on. There was like not all of our conversations were like, oh, this is the macro adjustment we're making. It was never like, why are you not hitting your macros? And that was good because it gave me some confidence. But at the same time, it led me to believe that, oh, that's what nutrition and coaching is. You just give
yeah.
people your macros and they get results. And then you start working with a couple more people and you realize that that's not the case.
No,
Not
not at
at
all.
all. A lot of it
Yeah,
is, yeah, you know.
yeah. More than half the battle, probably 75% of the battle, is just getting the person to actually hit the guidelines or recommendations you give them, instead of
Yeah.
actually giving the recommendations. Backing up just a little bit. So
Yeah.
did you go into your undergrad with going into like getting a nutrition degree? Because right now you're getting your bachelor's in nutrition. Did you start off with something else and then transition, or?
Yeah. I came in as a pre-med student, just like just about any student in the STEM major thinks you're going to be a doctor. So like, I came in like that. Plan was to be an orthopedic surgeon, be like a team doctor or something. And I genuinely think that I could have done that if I like actually wanted to, but just the
Yeah,
amount of schooling after getting a bachelor's that needed to be done, um, it just wasn't for me. And then couple that with the fact that I felt like, especially when I started learning more about nutrition, I felt like I could help a lot more people a lot more effectively doing that
yeah,
rather than being a doctor. So yeah, I came in as a pre-med student, and then after I started the coaching business and started really enjoying that stuff, I switched over to nutrition.
yes, yeah, definitely. Um, No, that's cool. That's cool. So you mentioned that now you are working with, I know you've been working with professional athletes for a while. Like I've seen you post some overseas athletes that you've been working
Yeah,
with, a lot of basketball players. Um, so I guess how did you even get to working with these pro athletes? Like you just literally just send them a DM, hey, I'm a nutrition coach, I can help you out, or like how did that even come about? Because I know you started more with kind of general population ish, and now you've like
yeah,
transitioned to more athletes and pro athletes specifically.
yeah. I mean, I pretty much just slid in the DMs like that. That's the strategy, honestly.
Yeah,
It's like one of those things where you just have to be resourceful. And it was at a point where like I really wanted to work with pro athletes, and I had a couple athletes that I was working with, like high school, college guys, that were getting really good results. And I was like, I knew that if I was given that opportunity, I could get almost any pro athlete results. It was
yeah,
just a matter of how am I going to create that opportunity. And yeah, I just messaged a bunch of guys on Instagram and saying, hey, nutrition coach, I'm up and coming, but like, yo, I know my stuff. And I genuinely believe that I know my stuff. Obviously, there's still a lot more for me to learn. There's a lot more for everyone to learn. But I felt genuinely confident that given that opportunity, I would get the athlete results. So yeah, I just reached out to them on Instagram. That's how I landed a lot of the pro guys that I work with that play overseas. They're a lot of basketball players, and then kind of a similar situation with the NFL guys. Um, just reaching out and putting myself out there. And yeah, some guys said no thanks. Some guys said we already have a nutritionist.
yeah,
Some guys didn't respond, but like a handful of guys just hit me back. I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And
yeah.
it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how things can just work like that. Like if you never ask, the answer is always no.
Oh yeah.
But like if you ask, you have maybe a 50-50 shot, of them saying yes, and then you get your shot, and obviously you know your stuff, so you're able to deliver the results that they want. Which
Yeah, because I mean, like anyone can get lucky like that and like DM someone like, "Yo, I do this. Like, let me do it. Like, let me help you out." But if they work with you and like you suck, like
yeah,
that that opportunity is only going to come a couple times. So like if you get
exactly.
that opportunity and you're not prepared, it's like then at that point, like you're not going to get the opportunity again. But like if you're prepared and you execute, then it's like, cool, let's go.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. That's awesome. So one thing that I wanted to say too is like, I know you've talked about this on your Instagram before, so you posted it, but like
Yeah.
you're only 20 years old, which is
Yeah.
absolutely insane when you think about just like how much progress you've made with your coaching business in, you know, like a year and a half, 2 years, and you're working with professional athletes. And like I'm not bringing up your age to say like you don't know your stuff. I'm bringing up your age to
Yeah.
say that like you're a workhorse and you know
Appreciate
you're
that.
hustling. So
Yeah, no, I mean, like the whole age thing, like it was an insecurity for a while, like just because, yeah, like I'm still in school to get my degree. Like, oh, what if
yeah,
they think I'm not credible because I'm not a dietitian yet or I don't have my degree yet? Um, but at a certain point, you kind of just have to get past that. Like, if you know your stuff and you genuinely want to help people, like it'll work out. And some people might have that response of like, oh, I don't want to work with him because he doesn't have his degree yet. He's not a dietitian yet, or he's only 20. Cool, that's fine. But there's plenty of other people out there that have kind of looked past that. And I think once I looked past that and understood, like, I studied this stuff relentlessly. I've
yeah,
been working my ass off to like get really good at this and proving myself, getting people results. Once I understood that and just looked at the facts of that situation, it's like, all right, cool. Like, it doesn't really matter.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, in the end, like people don't care about the age. They don't care about like your specific degree. Even they just care about
Yeah,
getting the results they want. And if you can deliver that,
definitely.
then you're golden. You know. Uh,
Definitely.
so what's kind of the biggest struggle, or I guess we'll probably go over a couple big struggles that you see, but what's like the number one biggest struggle that you see with your professional athletes? I guess nutrition wise, from the very beginning when you first bring on an athlete and start
Yeah.
working with
I mean, I think it's very similar to what you see with general population people in a lot of
them.
situations. I think people expect nutrition for like elite athletes to be like drastically different. Obviously, as you get to more advanced strategies like nutrient timing and supplementation and like the little marginal gain stuff that's going to get you that extra 1%,
Yeah,
for a general population person that's just trying to be healthy and live a good life, that's probably not going to matter that much. But for an athlete who's a professional whose ability to bring in an income and make a living depends on their ability to be the best on the field or in the court, that 1% matters, especially when everyone at that level is so elite. But with that being said, a lot of these guys aren't really in a position to be working on those 1% things yet. Because, like,
yeah,
you can work on the 1% stuff, but if you're not eating enough, or if you're barely touching a vegetable, or if you don't know how to cook at all, or these basic foundational tasks that kind of overlap Gen Pop and athletes, if you don't have the foundational stuff in place, that 1% stuff really isn't going to matter all that much. So, kind of similarly to when I thought coming into nutrition coaching in general, it was going to be like a certain thing, and it turned out it being a completely different thing. Kind of had the same experience when I first started working with pro athletes. It was like, I was like, oh, I'm finally going to get to just like give them their macros and like focus on nutrient timing and all these cool supplements and all these cool, like
yeah,
high end advanced strategies. But it's still the same. Like, okay, let's get 3 meals in per day. Let's get 4 meals, 5 meals in per day. Let's get that consistent first. Let's get some more vegetables in. Let's get protein in every meal. Getting them to try and use MyFitnessPal is like pulling teeth sometimes. It varies, like with general pop as well. Like some people are really open to it.
yeah,
Some people aren't. I feel like a lot of people, I've heard some people say like, oh, pro athletes aren't going to track their macros. Like, some are, just like some general population
yeah.
are. Like some general population people are. Some aren't. And like that's where the whole individualization stuff comes in,
Mhm.
which we can probably talk about. But in terms of like mistakes, just the same general foundational stuff. I would say if I had to pick one, under eating would probably be the biggest one, and
Yeah,
where most athletes could get the biggest bang for their buck, just going from not eating enough to now fueling properly. So if I had to pick one, it'd probably be under eating.
yeah. No, you said a lot of really good things in there. The one thing that really caught my attention was just the same principles, I guess, that like the general population struggles with. The professional athletes struggle with too a lot of times, like
Yeah.
the basics. And I'm sure maybe you see some kind of pushback or some kind of um, resistance towards focusing on those very simple tasks when they're a professional athlete. They think, oh, I need to be optimizing my nutrient timing, like you said, or I have to
Yeah.
be eating this many carbs before this. And they focus so much on like pre and post workout or pre and post uh,
Yeah.
training nutrition when they don't even have the basics. Like they're not even eating enough calories in the entire day.
I think it's more of like just getting them to focus on their nutrition at all,
At all.
rather than, I don't think it's, in my experience, I mean, there's some guys like that, but most of them, it's more just getting them to understand like this stuff matters.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like a lot of times it's communicated in a way that's not very effective, like with their team nutritionists or whatever. Like, there's some great team nutritionists out there, but there's some that will just communicate it in a way that's not super effective. So kind of getting them to understand how exactly it's going to help them, and then from there, like the basic stuff. Um, I in the NFL pre-draft workouts, pre-draft athletes that I've been working with, for a couple of them, I have them tracking their macros. For some of them, it's just like, send me pictures of your food. Like it can be that simple.
Yeah.
Um, but I came in and tried to have everyone start tracking, because I'm of the opinion of like, okay, if we try tracking and it sticks for a certain guy, cool, let's run with it, because that's
Yeah.
going to be optimal.
Yeah.
If it doesn't stick and he's like, yo, this is too hard, then we'll scale it back. But I think a lot of people will sell athletes short in that, oh, they're not going to, like I said, they're not going to track macros.
Yeah.
They don't have time. They don't care. It's like, no, if they understand how this is going to help them, some of them will. Some of them still won't.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, we scale back and go back to hand-sized portions, or even just sending me pictures of food, or like very simple stuff. But if the tracking their macros and like getting very specific with their food intake, if it sticks, cool, let's run with that, because
Yeah.
that's going to be optimal for them.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, that's interesting that you said it's a struggle sometimes to even just get them to focus on their nutrition at all. And
It's a struggle to get them to text me back sometimes.
it's
That's probably the biggest behavioral thing.
um,
Like this communication, like, is if
yeah,
you don't have the data, if you don't have data, you can't really make adjustments.
yeah,
So that's where like sending pictures of food sounds like a really basic, like that's like, it's whatever, like just a really basic task, but that goes a long way, because it gives me an insight as to what they're actually eating. And even if I don't have numbers around it, it's like, that meal does not look like it has enough carbs. How do we fix that? Instead of
yeah,
like just being completely in the dark if you don't hear back from an athlete in like a week, 2 weeks, which happens, because I mean, like, their lives get busy, or they still haven't kind of connected those dots of like why nutrition matters yet. Once you kind of get that, like, that light bulb goes off in their head, then it's um, very straightforward. But it's like getting to that point that's the tough part.
yeah. I wonder. My my speculation is maybe it's hard for some of them to understand how important it is, because like if they are a professional athlete or they're close to being a professional athlete, they're obviously really good at what they do, and they've
Yeah.
probably gone their whole life, high school just being so much better than everyone else, and even in college maybe so much better than everyone else without paying attention to it. So they're like, why do I have to pay attention to it now? I've gotten
Yeah.
this far without it.
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. Like, these guys are freak athletes, and even like at the professional level, at like the highest level, NFL, NBA, NHL, whatever, like, they're freak athletes, and a lot of them have, like you said, have been eating like crap their whole life, but just
Yeah,
because they're so gifted or so hardworking in the gym,
yeah,
they've been able to kind of get by in spite of that. And I think the biggest thing is getting them to understand that they're not where they are because of their eating habits, because they eat Taco Bell before the game. They're there in spite of the fact that
yeah,
they eat Taco Bell before the game, or in spite of the fact that they're getting 5 hours of sleep because they're up playing Fortnite.
yeah,
Like, getting them to understand that. And I think that comes down to just getting some easy wins, like with stuff that like yields tangible results. Because once you get them feeling a little better, then it's a lot easier to get that future buy-in. But
mm,
yeah, I totally agree, because like a lot of them have just been insanely talented or athletically gifted growing up. Not to say that they're not hardworking, but the combination of the genetics and the hard work outside of nutrition has got them to where they are. But
yeah,
it's kind of helping them understand that they could be that much better or be that good for that much longer in their career if
Yeah.
they got their nutrition dialed in.
Yeah, which I'm sure is really tough to do sometimes because you're almost trying to paint this picture of something that they haven't seen yet, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I can definitely get how that would be tough to convince them. So about, I guess, how many athletes or like what percentage would you say actually do track their macros? Because I understand like a lot of the athletes are probably super busy and they feel like they don't have time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like if you want to actually go to the pros or you're in the pros, you're already spending so much time on your craft and being the best you can. Like, why not just spend the extra 10 minutes to input your food on your phone, while you're probably looking at your phone multiple times a day anyway?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard to put a percentage number on it. I would say um, right off the bat, definitely less than 50%, like initially. I don't know, like given like how, yeah, it's hard to put a percentage on it, but I would say it's definitely split. Some guys gravitate towards it. I think if a guy is the type of person that is like driven or kind of has that underdog mentality, it's a lot easier to get them to buy in because like they're
Yeah,
looking for that extra 1%.
yeah,
It's tougher with the guys that either just don't care for whatever reason or they're athletically gifted and they're just freak athletes and they're like, yeah, I guess, but like I'm fine. So yeah, it's hard to put a number on it though.
yeah. So you said under eating is probably number one problem that you see. So I guess why do you think, like, why are they under eating? Is it because I know with like general population, a lot of general pop people do undereat, or fitness people, because they're
Yeah,
choosing, extremely quote unquote healthy meals that are just, broccoli, rice, and chicken breast like three
yeah.
times a day, and they're getting like 1,000 calories a day. So is it that where they're trying to eat super healthy, or they're just so busy that they just don't have time?
I think it's a combination of both those things, along with the fact that their workload is absurd and I don't think they realize how many calories they go through and what that looks like in
Yeah,
food. Um, so I think a combination of some athletes, obviously, some athletes are just out there eating whatever, but the ones that actually try to like think they're eating healthy, tend to undereat because obviously if they're eating healthy, they're less calorie dense foods, more
yeah,
satiating, things like that. Um, and some are just crazy busy. Some just don't eat. Their appetite really isn't there for whatever reason, and like maybe they could be at home all day just chilling, but like
yeah,
they don't eat for whatever reason. Like, oh, I wasn't hungry. Like, all right, cool. Um, and then yeah, you pair that with their like absurd output in the gym, on the field, and on the court. And it's just a recipe for undereating. Like I've yet to work with an athlete that was actually eating enough calories, like based on like the calculations that I would do, like with the Harris-Benedict equation, stuff like that. Like I've yet to have an athlete that was actually eating that much. I've had one that was within like 300 calories of it, which is not too bad. But most of them are eating significantly less than that.
yeah, yeah. There was a guy that I was working with once, and he he wasn't a professional athlete, but he did play some kind of like club sport, and he was
Yeah.
eating, it was like 1,200 calories a day, and
Oh,
I was just like,
yeah.
what? And he was like my size pretty much, and like myself, I'm not even extremely active throughout the day. Like I basically sit at a desk, do some walking around hallways and stuff, um,
Hmm.
just lift for maybe 1.5 to 2 hours, like 5 days a week, and
Yeah.
like to maintain my weight, I got to eat like 3,500 calories. So like I can't even imagine how many calories some of these pro guys have to eat when they probably weigh, close to 250 pounds if you're like NFL guys. Um,
Yeah.
and they're doing, 2 days, 3 days, playing games, like I can imagine it's absurd up to like 5 to 6,000 calories or something for some of them.
Yeah, there was one of my good friends is the offensive lineman at San Jose State right now, and I was helping him out. This was actually before like I started working with a lot of pro athletes, but way back, I think over a year ago, I was helping him out a little bit, and he was trying to put on some size like 285, or he was trying to get to 285, and
Yeah.
he had to eat like 6,000 calories a day, and it was just like it was absurd. And it was like
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know how he got the food down. I don't. It's just like it's so much food. And that's where it gets a little tricky, is that you got to figure out, okay, are you going to use liquid nutrition, or
Yeah.
does food quality suffer a little bit in order to get the calories in? You kind of got to make those judgment calls. Because yeah, I think if you try to, in that case, if you're trying to get like 5,000-6,000 calories just from like quote unquote clean foods, it's very difficult. Like
Oh,
I've done it with 4,500 calories, just because I mean my gut health wasn't the best, and I mean still isn't the best. Like when I was playing, like I had to get a lot of calories in, and I managed to do so in eating like a lot of, or the vast majority of my food from like your typical like high quality like
yeah.
quote unquote clean foods, just because I personally felt better, and it's good work for me. But for most people, that's going to be tough. So figuring out different strategies to use to get those calories up is probably one of the biggest roadblocks for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And that's kind of where, some people think that, eating for performance and eating for health, or eating even to change your body composition and eating for health, are necessarily exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
which they're not. Like, you even run into this problem with some Gen Pop people, or people starting like fitness, where you have to try to get their calories up, but they're always trying to eat super clean all the time, and they aren't as that hungry. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe let's throw something in there that you wouldn't necessarily think as healthy to try to get those calories up. And they're like, wait, what? Like this is bad for me. I'm not supposed to eat this. Like, I'm going to get super fat. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. And if you want to put on muscle, like, you have to get those calories in somehow. And
For
that's
sure.
where people don't really understand that, like, there is a lot of overlap, but they aren't exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always going to be that like foundation, or that underlying foundation of health. Like if you just feel like crap all the time, and your digestion is completely off, and like you're just like you're eating the correct macros, but it's all coming from junk, and it's just like
Yeah.
that's all happening, you're going to have a tough time getting the progress that you want to get. But assuming you have that underlying foundation, as you start to push to the extremes of performance, the extremes of aesthetics, you're going to kind of deviate from health to an extent. But I mean, that's where the whole conversation of periodization becomes very important. So like, yeah, during your season, I don't care if you got to eat gummy worms. Gummy worms are just on the top of my mind right now, because one of my pre-draft athletes was like down in, I made a post about it a couple days
Yeah,
ago.
I was actually going to bring that up.
Two of them are living together, and like they go through like a bag of like gummy worms every single day, like a pretty sizable bag of gummy worms every single day. Well, they were. I think we kind of got them off that habit now. But that's an example of, I wasn't really that mad about it, because they need the food, they need
Yeah.
the calories. Now, is that a long-term solution? No, we want to get kind of the consumption of candy and gummy worms down a little bit, replace that with more high quality foods. But I kind of forgot where I was going with that. I think it's just the conversation of like,
Worms.
yeah, when that happens, you trying to go with a thought, and you're like, wait, what was that? What
Yeah,
was that point
yeah.
again?
Well, you were talking about just like how important it is to still keep food quality high, even if.
Oh yeah. So the periodization. That's where I was going. So like during their season, or during their like they're leading up to the combine right now, performance is like the number one priority. It's okay to kind of deviate from what would be perfectly healthy, because
Yeah.
we know that, okay, in that postseason phase, we're going to recover. We're going to focus on more fruits and vegetables. Not that we aren't focusing on fruits and vegetables now, obviously we are, but we're going to place even more of an emphasis on that when it's time to recover.
Yeah.
So just knowing that there's that game plan and that kind of long-term framework in place is super helpful. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. It's similar to with like Gen Pop people, or people that are like recreational fitness people, like having like a bulking phase where you're really pushing calories, and you might have to throw in, something that's quote unquote dirty food to get those calories in, actually put on weight that you want to put on. And then having periods of like maintenance where, you cut out most of those dirty foods. You always want to have stuff in moderation.
For sure.
Like, who doesn't enjoy pizza or something like that? But just having that maintenance phase where you aren't, in a calorie deficit, you are in a calorie surplus, you're just at maintenance, having your body just kind of relax and kind of coast at that level for a little bit. It sounds a little similar to, what you were describing with the off season.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, I know Jason talks about periodization for like Gen Pop people a lot. And yeah, a lot of it overlaps.
Yeah.
Just like, I think a lot of people understand or at least are aware of periodization in terms of their training, especially athletes. Like they know, like, okay,
Yeah.
during in season, like my training is going to look like this. During the off season, I have this plan. Leading up to when team training camp is, I'm going to do this in my training. They know, even if they don't know it's called periodization, there is some sort of periodization there.
Yeah.
When it comes to nutrition, though, it's like, oh, eat healthy. Cool. Like what does that mean to you? And a lot of times, like you were saying, it leads to that like chicken, rice, and broccoli diet, which is, I wouldn't even say it's great. It lacks variety,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like it's that quote unquote like clean eating, which in theory sounds good. But what if their calorie demands are just through the roof?
Yeah.
It's not going to be enough to sustain that. Um, like there's so many different variables, and that's where like properly periodizing is super helpful.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I think one of the biggest things people struggle with is just understanding energy balance and how that affects your overall, obviously, energy, but your
Oh yeah.
performance and body
Oh,
composition.
even in sport, there's like the whole like relative energy deficiency in sport
Yeah.
thing. There's so many different side effects to that. I don't even know. There's like an infographic. It's like the middle and like a bunch of different like
Yeah.
effects, but there are a ton of negative effects to not fueling enough. I mean,
Yeah.
both physically and cognitively. Like there's like it's been shown that I think cognitive function declines like if you're not eating enough calories too. Which is important if you're an athlete. You got to be able to make good decisions.
Yeah.
If you're in the fourth quarter, you're not properly fueled, and you commit a turnover because you weren't able to think straight. That could cost you a game, cost you a championship. It could cost you a contract or a scholarship. This stuff matters. I'm a very extreme example, but um, definitely, if an athlete were just to go from under eating to eating enough, it would make so much of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think when you're getting used to tracking and you're actually seeing how many calories you're eating, and then you bump that up and you like visually see the number, go up that you're eating that much, and then you realize how much better you feel. Like that's got to be so empowering to the athlete. They're like, wow, like
Yeah,
this actually makes a huge difference.
yeah, yeah, and that's why I'm a really big fan of at least trying to have athletes track their food.
Yeah.
Um, whether it sticks completely or not, it's to be determined. But at least for a time period, to have them understand like what those portion sizes look like, what 4,000 calories worth of food looks like, and like you said, connecting those dots between the calories that they're eating or how the macro breakdown and how they feel on the court or on the field. Because once they connect those dots, it's game over. Like once they understand, oh, I did this and like I just hit a PR for the first time in 3 months. Or I did this and like I feel a lot better. I'm recovering and now I'm like in a position to get my starting spot or my spot in the starting lineup. Like if they're able to connect those dots,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes easy to create that buy-in. It's just like
Yeah.
connecting those dots at first is the most difficult part.
Yeah, yeah, getting that positive reinforcement and realizing that's what's causing them to, increase their performance or whatever it is definitely key.
Yeah.
So, how many do you ever run into athletes who they are constantly trying to, get leaner or get abs? Because I know you've talked about that on Instagram or on social media before. Is that like super common that they're trying to do that while increasing their performance or in season at the same time?
All the time. All the time. Um, with a lot of guys, very rarely do I ever hear the goal like, oh, I just want to perform better. Because usually when guys think of nutrition, like, oh, I want to build muscle, I want to
Yeah,
get leaner, and those goals are great, especially building muscle. Like that's fine. That you're going to perform better if you're actively in a calorie surplus for the most part. But a lot of guys will say, yeah, I want to get leaner, and a lot of times they want to get leaner because they think it's going to help them perform better. And that's the really interesting thing. And that's
yeah,
where you kind of have to educate like the nutritional approach to get you leaner and the nutritional approach to fuel maximum performance are conflicting. One requires a calorie deficit, one requires maintenance, if not a slight surplus. So like you're not really going to do both at the same time. And in some cases, getting leaner will help them, like if they're very overweight, or like other very specific situations, like it might help them. But for the most part, that kind of desire to get super lean is a little bit misguided. I think it comes from a good place, but that's where education and helping them understand, like, like I know you want to perform better, so how about if we do this instead? Because this is how it's going to help you perform better. And odds are, like, if you're at least sitting at maintenance, your body's going to recomp a little bit. You'll look better anyway. So kind of getting that across to them. But yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I know there was I think it was a college football player maybe that was like last year it came out. There was some article written that he was like 3% body fat or something ridiculous like that.
Isn't that like physiologically impossible?
I don't know.
Is it 3% or 4%? I think 3% might be like the lowest, because like there was also something that came out that said Dwight Howard was like 2 point something
Oh my
percent
God.
body fat. And I was just like, okay, one, that's not true.
Yeah.
Two, he'd be dead if he was.
Yeah, he would
But
not be able to
yeah,
run up the court if he was
yeah,
2.9% body fat. Like,
yeah. No, I think there was a stat. I don't know the exact source for this, so don't quote me on this. But I
yeah,
think there was a stat that was like the top like vertical jump, like the people with the top vertical jumps in like the NBA combine were somewhere around 7 to 8% body
okay.
fat, or in like the 7 to 8 or 7 to 10, one of like kind of pretty lean. So
Yeah,
there's some merit to getting athletes relatively lean, but I think a lot of athletes are kind of already at that point, especially at the elite level, at the high school level, college level. I mean, there's a lot more variance there, but especially at the
yeah,
elite
yeah,
level, a lot of guys are kind of already in a position where they're very lean. Um, Obviously dependent on the sport and the position. Like an O lineman's not going to be 7% body fat,
yeah.
but
100.
for the most part, athletes are already in a pretty good position when it comes to their body fat percentage. So they'd be a lot better served by trying to fuel properly for performance,
Yeah,
rather than for fat loss.
yeah. When I read that article that said that guy was 3% and people were going nuts about it on social media, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, and it was
Yeah,
like people were kind of like praising it, like that's the goal, to be that ripped, that jacked.
yeah,
It's like, no, if you're playing a professional sport, no way in hell you want to be that lean, or you're not going to be performing better. Like, I would argue if he was 3%, which I know he wasn't, but if he was, like, he would perform a lot better if he gained, got up to the
yeah.
7 to 10 or 8 to 10% at least,
For sure. I think like 8 to 10% is like a pretty good range to aim for. That's like not like absurd, like not unrealistic. And also like you're pretty lean. I think most
Yeah,
most people would be pretty happy with their body composition at 8 to 10%
yeah, yeah.
body fat.
That's a whole other conversation of people having misconceptions on what percentage of body fat looks like what. Like, people think they're like
And it's like
10%.
different for each person too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, that's true too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like I guarantee, I'm just gonna take a wild guess, for the athlete that was at like 3% body fat or whatever, he probably used one of those like handheld things to,
yeah,
the ones I'm talking about. I don't know exactly what they're called, but
I don't know what
I
they're
used
called.
one of those and I said I was like 6% body fat. And I was just like, that's not like, I appreciate the compliment, but like, that's not true at all.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
yeah, some of those things are just super not reliable.
yeah, for sure. And like even myself, like powerlifting, like I dabble in powerlifting and a little bit of bodybuilding, kind of a mix. Like I'm not
Yeah.
100% committed to each one, but like my powerlifting numbers are so much better when I am a little heavier, when I do have a little more fluff on me, when I'm not trying to get abs. Like with that kind of sport, like having that extra fluff, my joints feel better. I have more leverage that I can use, like while I'm squatting. Like I can bounce off my thighs a little more when I'm squatting. I can have more surface area on the back of the bench when I'm bench pressing, just
Hmm.
having more mass. And like when I start to cut, and even if I am like at maintenance, but I'm at a lower body weight and I'm leaner, I still don't perform as well. And
Yeah.
I think people just don't realize that the the body size or the body fat level that you perform the best at isn't probably going to be the one that you feel like you look the best at. There's probably going to be a difference.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it's also important to clarify that like when we say fuel for performance, like you're not going to get fat. Like that's
No.
not going to happen. Like I think a lot of times when people kind of hear that idea of like fueling for performance and fueling like in eating for fat loss or like opposing things, they
Yeah.
kind of think that, oh, I'm gonna like gain all this weight and get fat and I'm like gonna hate my body. And like that's just not gonna happen. Odds are like if you're actually fueling for performance and recovering properly, you're gonna feel better and you're gonna look pretty damn good too.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's important to clarify that because I think a lot of people get that mixed up when they hear that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not going to fuel for performance. Then I want my six pack. Like
Yeah.
you could have a six pack and be performing totally fine.
Yeah, definitely. Just trying to push for lower and lower for no reason.
Exactly.
It's just silly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Plus, like you said, it depends on the sport too. Like basketball, like obviously you don't want to put on a bunch of extra, just useless body weight when you're playing basketball. I mean, you're running up and down. And same thing, like in football, depending on your position, like if you're a lineman,
Yeah.
gaining a few extra pounds probably or might benefit, you playing, in your game. But when it comes to, on the
Yeah.
basketball court or something else that has more endurance and having more weight on your body is kind of a net negative, then
Yeah.
definitely don't want to be just putting on useless weight.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. No, I think it's important because I think a lot of guys will chase a goal kind of arbitrarily without really thinking about like what they're trying to accomplish. Like, oh, I want to gain all this size because I want to perform better. It's like, is that actually going to allow you to perform better in your sport? In
Yeah.
some cases it might, but in many cases it won't. So and just understanding like what you're actually trying to achieve so then you can match your strategies with that rather than just saying, oh, like everyone says I should be gaining muscle, so I'm just going to try to put on 30 pounds in this off season and then end up like your joints hate you and you're injured.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to understand like what you're actually trying to go for and understanding what strategy is going to lead to that outcome. So you can match those. Because a lot of times guys will think they're working super hard, they're doing this, they're doing that. But if you look at what they want to achieve and what their actions are, like what their plan is, they don't really
Mhm.
match up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super interesting. And just a random example that kind of came to my mind was like LeBron James, like his early years in Cleveland, like, well, obviously right now he's still built like a brick shit house, but like his early
Mm-hmm.
years in Cleveland, like he was huge. And during like towards the end of his last stint in Cleveland, where he went on that run and they played the Warriors,
Yeah.
he scored like 50 in the first game, but they lost or whatever. I feel like he was he was even like smaller, like leaner in that season than he was in those
Hmm.
beginning years. And I felt like it was one of his best seasons. He just looked fresh on the court. He played those like 2 or 3 playoff games, like 48 minutes straight. He didn't even sit. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so like his position, putting on a bunch of weight, probably going to be a net negative for him. But somebody else who maybe they're playing in the post a lot more, putting on a little weight might be beneficial depending on what their
Yeah.
starting size is, obviously. But I don't know. It's just interesting. Like it's all
For
individual based
sure.
on your
I mean,
position.
and there's also like the idea and like the truth of the matter that even though it might not directly impact your performance, it might impact how a scout looks at you. Like
Yeah,
if you're this scrawny little white dude, like
yeah,
you might be the most skilled dude in the world, most skilled point guard in the world, but you're like 5'8", like 130, and like that might be the difference between you getting to that next level and not.
yeah,
So
for sure.
even though like putting on a little bit of size, even if it doesn't hurt your performance, it might not help it that much. Like stat for stat, like in your points per game or rebounds per
Yeah,
game or whatever, but it might impact how a scout looks at your ability to translate to that next level. So I think there, even though body composition doesn't inherently, it's not inherently like the end all be all for performance. I think it's important for athletes to also take that into consideration. It's like as much as like, us as like nutrition professionals know that that's not true. Scouts don't know that. They might think that because you're 20 pounds lighter than they want you to be, that you're not going to perform well, when that might not be true. So we could either say like that's BS and that's not right, which it might not be, or we could just work with it and say like, okay, cool, let's find that balance of like getting you to the body composition that you want to, and getting you to the body composition that's going to allow scouts to like take notice of you, while also not sacrificing performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, because like, yeah, in some cases it might not help your performance, but it might put you in a better position to get that scholarship spot or the contract at the next level, just because you kind of look the part a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I know you've mentioned this before, but like people who do want to change their body composition, you mentioned with the nutritional periodization thing, um, like that's all done in the off season, right? Like you're not trying to actively
Yeah.
change your body composition in the in season,
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the good things about periodization, is that it allows you to do that, and it allows you to accomplish body composition changes in a safe and effective way.
Yeah.
So like you said, I would probably schedule that fat loss phase or really drastic like muscle building phase in the off season, and preferably earlier in the off season, like as far away from like actual competition as possible. Now, where the conversation gets interesting and like you really got to be careful is with like high school team sport athletes, because like during their off season,
Yeah.
that's a lot of the times when guys are getting looks to like from college scouts, in recruiting camps, in AAU ball, in 7-on-7 tournaments for football. So even though that gets to off season,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of in season again.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that. So, yeah, definitely if you're going to pursue body composition changes during the off season, no doubt, and just make sure it's like an actual off season. So if there's any reason that your performance matters a lot right now, probably not the best time to pursue, especially fat loss. But like any drastic weight gain too, probably not a good look.
Yeah. Yeah.
But especially you want to stay away from like trying to get super lean when you're trying to perform at the highest level.
Yeah. Yeah. I would assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, well, I guess with the general population or recreational lifters, when they're trying to put on muscle and lose body fat, myself, I don't recommend huge gains in weight, super fast and then, big cuts. Like I recommend doing it
Yeah.
slower, because then you're going to put on mostly muscle mass and not have to lose weight so quickly. But I would assume that it's probably maybe even more important for people who are athletes, because playing your sport, practicing, getting better, it's probably a lot different doing some of, I don't know, the positions, moves, whatever sport you play. It's a lot different doing that, when you're 20 pounds lighter or 20 pounds heavier versus,
Yeah.
normal weight.
Yeah. I mean, typically with athletes, I follow kind of like the same like Eric Helms principle of like 1% of your body weight per month. I think that's a pretty safe recommendation. And then that's where assessing progress and assessing biofeedback matters. Because if you're like, okay, cool, you gained the right amount of weight, but like now you kind of feel slower, maybe we should dial it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you're on top of it, and as long as you're really paying attention to how it's affecting you, I always kind of make the comparison of like, it's kind of like standing on train tracks and being afraid of getting run over by a train. Like you see the train coming from a mile away. Like you have plenty of time to kind of step off the tracks.
Yeah.
That's kind of like why it's important to track your progress, track your biofeedback, track how you're feeling, so that way you can kind of course correct as necessary before it becomes an actual issue. So if you notice like a week or two go by and you feel super lethargic, and maybe you feel heavy, or you feel super hungry on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the ability to course correct very easily. And again, that's where tracking macros is very helpful.
Yeah.
Or at least having some sort of structure around quantifying your food intake. So that way you can make those adjustments like, oh, I'm eating too much. Let me decrease calories by 200. Or, oh, let me decrease my portion size of carbs at this meal, or whatever. Not saying carbs are bad, just arbitrary example. I know one person gonna hear that, like, he said cut out carbs. No.
Tommy, I'm going to be able to have you on this podcast.
But just overall, quantifying your intake and quantifying your progress is going to be the best way to avoid going too quickly or eat too slowly and hitting plateaus. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone who didn't exactly hear the number he said, he mentioned gaining 1% of your body weight per month.
Yeah. And that's like a
Per month.
general
Yeah,
recommendation.
general recommendation. So if you're
Like very, very general.
yeah, if you're a 200-pound guy in general, 2 pounds a month, you're gonna be gaining, a decent amount of muscle. So you don't need to. So all you bros out there, you
Yeah.
need to be going and smashing a bunch of large pizzas every single day to try to gain 10 pounds in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
And a lot of times, like with athletes that are kind of new to the game of like nutrition and especially strength training, if they're younger, like high school guys, um, they might stay the same exact weight, but look completely different and be performing a lot better as well. So that's why, I mean, tracking other things besides just the weight, just like with general population
Yeah.
becomes very important. So you can actually see like all of the areas of progress that you're making rather than just focusing on, yeah, I'm trying to build muscle. I haven't gone up in weight. Like, if you look in the mirror, you look completely different than you did 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So just making sure to keep that in perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're coming up on close to an hour, but I wanted to ask, are there any like other weird things that some of your athletes have come up to you and said they did? Like I know you mentioned the gummy worm thing, but anything
Yeah.
pre-game rituals, anything weird like that?
No pregame rituals yet. There was one. So it's part of like the NFL pre-draft process. They also work with the private chef. So I've been like communicating with her as well on like portion
Okay.
sizes and like stuff like that. And the chef was telling me like one of the athletes asked specifically for scallops in their meal, which is like super odd that like they would go out of their way to ask for. I mean, nothing against scallops, they're great, but like it's just super random. Like some like 21, 22-year-old dudes like, yeah, I want scallops. So that was a pretty funny one. I'm trying to think if there's any other.
Did you ever figure out why he asked for scallops? Like, was there a reason that you know of?
Nah, he just asked for them. I don't know. He's
No.
fancy. I don't
That's
know. Yeah, so there's that. I'm trying to think if there's any other like that stand out. I think the gummy worms one was pretty interesting. That's not like too out of the ordinary. I think most like 20-something-year-old guys that are super active and hungry all the time are going to go for that.
Yeah, candy.
I can't think of any like super outlandish. I'm sure there's something in there, but I can't think of any that are like, yo, like what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure, as you start working with more pro athletes and NFL,
It'll happen for sure. Like
you'll
there's going to be
come up.
plenty more opportunities for like what the hell moments.
Yeah. So to finish out the podcast, I just want you to just let the audience know where they can find you, on Instagram, social media, Facebook, and then like any upcoming projects or anything else like coming up with your business that you're excited for or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the best place to find me at is I have my own podcast as well. So it's called The Peak Performance Project. You can find it pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts. I've taken a little, I don't know when this will get released, but for the past couple of weeks, there's been a little bit of a hiatus in episode upload just because it's been super busy. And I've been working on this other project, which I can't really say a ton about yet. But to keep up to date with that and find out more about that, the podcast will probably be the best way to do that. So I would go and subscribe there. There's like 150 episodes up already. So even if I don't upload for another couple weeks, there's plenty of stuff for you to catch up on, to listen to, plenty of awesome guests, solo episodes, Q&As, like anything you could ask for when it comes to sports nutrition. And that'll probably be the best place to find me. And then on social media, the best platform to kind of find me on would probably be Instagram. And also, if any of you are on TikTok, go follow me on TikTok because I'm trying to grow that. I've been trying so hard to get a viral post on there, and like I see you're active on there. Like it's difficult.
Sometimes
Man.
I'll post on there.
It's
It's
difficult.
hard. It's just like the most random ones will, it seems like, get a lot of traction. Like the one I made where I don't. God, what was it? Oh,
It's
it was
kind of like
about,
it's kind of like Instagram posts though. Like the ones I put all my effort
yeah.
into don't do anything, but then the one that I make in like 3 seconds like goes crazy.
Yeah, sometimes the memes I can definitely usually count on to get some
Oh,
traction. But like
yeah, same
that
thing here.
that one TikTok I posted on Instagram of it was of like me
That
giving
was a good one.
nutrition advice and then me trying to pose as like showing off my ass. That one got a lot of traction on Instagram, but it literally got like 0 views on TikTok. I'm like, do these people not
It
have
did it.
to use?
What?
Yeah, it got
No, I had one like that too that I put a lot of effort into, and I thought I was like, oh, this is the one. Like this is gonna go crazy.
yeah,
Like it was one like you know how there's trends that you can kind of
yeah,
use the hashtags on. It was a new trend too, so I was like, oh, not that many people have posted this trend yet. I'm like, this is gonna be the one that like makes me like TikTok viral, and then from there, it's just my business is gonna explode, and I never have to work a day in my life. But ended up getting like 20 views, and I was like, the hell, like
yeah.
what happened here? But long story short, social media, the best place is probably Instagram, um, T Clark Nutrition, and then same thing on TikTok, same thing on Twitter. Facebook is just Tommy Clark. I don't really post much on. I just it's the same stuff that's on Instagram, so like you're not missing out on much there. But really, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and then the podcast would probably be the best places to find me at.
Cool, cool. Yeah, no, super excited that I was able to have you on. You were able to take some time to come on here and give a more unique perspective. I think one of the biggest things to take away is um, don't be afraid to eat if you're an athlete because it's gonna pay so much dividends to your performance and focusing on your nutrition. Like if you're
Absolutely.
ahead, if you're really dominating the game right now, just imagine how much more you would if you actually had the food in you to do it. So
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's huge. Like just cap like jumping on that last point. Like if you're already killing it, cool. Like I'm happy for you, congrats. But imagine how much more, and I think more importantly, like I said earlier in the show, how much longer you can maintain that level of performance for. Because like yeah, a 21-year-old guy that's in the NFL draft or NBA draft or whatever, any sport for that matter, may be able to get by with that.
yeah,
But what happens when you're 25, 30, 35, and you want to keep playing it and want to get that next contract? That's when it really matters. And I think
mhm,
helping younger athletes understand that is huge. But
yeah.
yeah, dude,
And
it's big.
even even if you are focusing on your nutrition, but it's not 100%, like work with someone who works with athletes like Tommy, get that extra, even just 3 to 5% better every single day, over a span of like seasons or
Absolutely.
years long, it's going to make a huge difference. So, um,
Crazy difference. I
yeah,
mean, just like with Gen Pop people, you don't have
yeah,
to be perfect. Like, I think, like I said, a lot of guys think that we're going to use all these elite level strategies and this crazy stuff, but the simple stuff works just as well. Like, same thing as general population people. Like, it's nothing too crazy different. I think if you can get the simple stuff down, you'll be in a great place because even if it's not perfect, you're still a lot better off than the person that's not paying attention to it at all.
yeah, definitely. Um, all right. Well, I hope you guys like this episode. I'm probably going to have Tommy on here again some other time for sure. And we'll talk about creatine making my butthole bleed again. But um,
Waiting, that was a sick way to come full circle.
I know, right? We came back to the
Yeah.
beginning. It's the
Perfect.
circle of life. It all comes together somehow. But
That was yeah, I can't think of a better way to finish the podcast. But yeah, dude, I just want to, before we end, just want to say thank you for having me on. This is a blast.
yeah, for sure. No, it was fun. It was fun. And, I definitely learned a lot. So I'm sure my viewers learned a lot too. So, yeah, I guess I'll see you when I see you.